Sekeres Price for Friday, April 26th, 2024. We're coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee, here at the iconic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver. If you have any reason to stay in downtown Vancouver, this is a beautiful hotel property. Steps away from the shopping on Robson, the fun on Granville, the dining on Davie. Call the Wall, 604-331-1000. Ask for the Sekeres Price rate. Some blackout dates apply. Matt Sekeres alongside Farhan Lalji of TSN sitting in for Blake Price today. Grady Sassett and Switches conducting things alongside Sean Chessman. We got a big show coming up, and it's all brought to you by Applewood Auto Group. We're right now at Applewood Nissan Richmond. The 2024 Rogue lease at 2.99% for 24 months. The 2024 Pathfinder lease from 3.99% for 24 months. Finance at 3.99% up to 36 months. And I'm in that QX55 from Infinity, from Applewood Nissan Infinity. Absolutely adore it. Check it all out. It's all good at Applewood. Our poll question today: should the Canucks reunite the Lotto line? That is, of course, Elias Paterson, JT Miller, Brock Besser, full-time, yes or no. You can vote at Sekeres Price on Twitter and YouTube.
Tight voting.
First of all, yeah, I noticed that. First of all, thank you for making time. It's been years since we've hosted a show together, so I'm very excited for today. I know you're going to Nashville for Game 6, if there is a Game 6. I know you got the CFL draft next week. You're the host of that and all your preparations, not to mention your daily work, not to mention all the coaching you're doing of young Luke. Thank you for making. Did you know that he's the coach of a quarterback prodigy? This is.
You know what? I don't get to coach him anymore.
He spoke it into existence years ago.
I knew he had a
young Luke would run around the Lions facility, and he's going to be a quarterback. So, anyways, great to see him.
Yeah, it should be fun. Like I said, I don't get to coach him anymore. He's well above my pay or my knowledge.
You've turned him over.
Yeah, I turned him over like when he was 9, and then he was like, "Dad, enough of you. Stop talking to me." But at least you still talk to me, which is good.
Oh, always.
And so much to talk about with the Vancouver Canucks team that, the part about the playoffs I missed the most was the emotional roller coaster that it puts an entire city through. One game in 12 seconds, and it was great, fans, and this was great, all of it.
Cathartic.
And then, they lost 4-1. And if the players go through that level of emotional roller coaster, they have no chance.
No chance
to function.
No,
at the best time of year. And I actually forgot how easy life was when the Canucks were really, really bad. I get to prepare.
We had a lot of Aprils off. Like Grady said to me, "Don't you usually go to like Mexico or somewhere at this time of year?" I'm like, "Yeah, but usually there's no more hockey being played."
Well, and I'm always at the NFL draft. This year I'm not, because it's in Detroit and it's easier for our Toronto guys to get there. And fortunately, because trying to add that to what we're doing with the Canucks would be difficult. There's no doubt about it. But yeah, like for 9 years, I was there at the bubble, right? I went to Edmonton and covered the entire bubble for the time the Canucks were there. But other than that, it's been pretty quiet.
It's great having it back, Farhan.
It is.
The city's got such a crackle, such an energy. When the Canucks are in the playoffs, there is really nothing that can replicate it. So it's been an awesome week here, and more to come as the series shifts to Nashville. Okay, first and foremost, answer me the poll question on Lotto Line, and then we'll get into our top story. What do you think? You reunite the Lotto Line?
I'm not feeling it. And the reason I say that is because when they've been together, I haven't felt it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they've played a fair bit now, and it's more in Game 3 than it was in Game 2, especially when Tocchet decided to sit Niels Höglander for 14 and a half minutes to finish out the game. And when they've been together, we always think when they do that right now, the way this team is operating, that it's to get Paterson going. But I think when they did it in Game 2, it was almost to get just any offense going. So I don't like it, because I haven't liked what I've seen from them. They had that moment earlier in the year when we saw Lotto Line with JT Miller at center instead of Paterson at center, when we'd seen it before, and it was good. But they haven't been able to recreate that at all in the minutes they've played. It hasn't all been offensive zone. It's even been defensive zone. And then the other thing is that it does make this team easier to match up against, because I've felt in this process that, the Canucks will try to get either the Miller line or the Lindholm line out against the O'Reilly-Forsberg line, and that should create some really favorable matchups for Paterson. Well, now, if you put all those guys on one line, it's going to be a lot easier to match up for Nashville I'd rather still keep those lines, keep those opportunities available for Paterson if he's ever going to wake up.
I'm going to disagree with you.
Okay.
For a number of reasons. Number one, I do think you have to get Paterson going. To a lesser degree, you need JT Miller and Brock Besser going too. Like, I know they're getting chances and looks, but if losers speak about chances and looks, winners talk about goals. We need goals.
Well, in the first game when they weren't doing it, you talk about secondary scoring.
Well, exactly. Through 2 games, and this could change, but through 2 games, I'm just not sure Nils Hoglander is going to give you anything here. Not to mention whoever's playing the other wing, whether it's McKayeff or Lafferty. So I just don't think leaving Paterson there is an option if you're going to get some offense. You talk about Nashville and being easier to match up again. And against most other teams, Farhan, I would absolutely agree. Do not put Lotto line together as a regular thing because it makes it easier to match up. I'm just not sure Nashville has the depth to sort of match. Like, I don't really worry about a lot of the other Nashville combinations outside of their big line. And if they want to dedicate just the one line to match up, like, who is it?
You're not worried about Anthony Beauvillier, Colton Sissons?
Well, Beauvillier's actually been pretty good. Like, so if they want to go power on,
they've both been good. They both have scored.
If they want to go power on power, if they want to go power on power and play that O'Reilly line against, okay, sure. Alternatively, like, I just don't necessarily feel like they've got a shutdown checking line that they could match against Lotto line and then be able to win the matchup with the O'Reilly line against the other. Sissons, Beauvillier, Zucker. Are you worried about them as a shutdown line?
Not really. I mean, Zucker's a playoff tested player, and I think he has a lot to offer. But as a line, probably not. I wouldn't be overly worried about it.
So, and also, I get the sense Tocchet wants it. How often he went to, or I shouldn't say how often, how early he went to it in game 1, and as you say, defensive zone draw. As the 2 games went along, we saw it go from being an offensive draw line only to, okay, let's try it on the fly, to, okay, let's try it for a defensive zone faceoff. So I feel like Tocchet is inching in that direction a little bit.
Yeah, it sounds desperate, for this early in it, and it takes away a bullet you can put in the chamber later in a game, when you need it, right? Like it feels like it's you want to be able to go to, not necessarily start with, and then feel like you're actually getting worse if you wind up splitting them up. Yeah, like I said, if I had seen more from that group in the first 2 games, I might feel differently. And look, they dominated the third period, but every line dominated the third period. The fourth line dominated the third period.
That's true.
Right? So a lot of that is score effects, and Nashville just got into that defensive posture. So I wouldn't read too much into the chances generated in the third period to think that this is the reason you should go in this direction. And honestly, I just don't think Nils Hoglander, that this is going to continue. I just think he's too good.
Really?
Yeah. Look, his style of play.
I can say that about Paterson, but you think that on Hoglander.
Hoglander's style of play, what he does well is controllable. Like, you can do that. If you're not feeling it from a scoring perspective and your hands aren't there and your confidence isn't there, that's a tougher nut to crack. But when it's about forechecking and getting in early and getting on the right side, of the defenseman and things like that, I think those things are controllable. I think you can go to Nils Hoglander and say, look, you got to fix this now. You've got to play the game that you play well. I think Nils Hoglander is capable of responding to that and know that, look, my back's up against the wall. My roster spot is up against the wall right now, right? I mean, you've got Vasily Podkolzin waiting. Yes, he should be in for PDG. Doesn't look like he's going to be. But you've got some guys that you can just say to Nils, like, your spot is not secure. I can move you down to the fourth line if you're not going to show up and play the way you need to play. So I think they're more likely to get a spark from him in this game after 2 subpar performances than they are from elsewhere in their lineup, and maybe Paterson could be the beneficiary.
Do you guys worry about Hoglander taking a couple games to get used to this big boy playoff?
He already has. We're 2 games in, and he's been a nothing.
But that's my point. Like, he's warming up to this, or he's been neutralized at this point. Like, defensemen on Nashville have kind of figured it out. This is his game, and if you can contain him, we can make him non-existent.
I don't know. I'm with Farhan in that the things that he can do to get going are controllable. He has his own agency there, so we'd like to see it because you root for the player. He's been
and we saw him so good along the wall. Creating chances off.
This should be his game,
in
right?
around the net.
Like, this should be his style.
Getting it.
Players get in the Stanley Cup playoffs and they realize, oh my God, this is different.
Like that's my point here.
No, I think he's wide-eyed. I think he's caught in the headlights a little. Let's get to our top story. Will the real best players please stand up? We talked about
Marshall Mathers over here.
Games. Well, I was inspired by the NFL draft opening last night. Did you see that? Eminem, in front of 150,000 people in Detroit. As we've talked about, the Canucks goal scoring in this series has come from the supporting cast. We are still awaiting the best goal scorers on the Vancouver Canucks, the best players and offensive players on the Vancouver Canucks to make their mark on the score sheet in this series. It was a topic Friday morning in Nashville. Let's hear from the captain, Quinn Hughes, and we'll come back after that and hear from the head coach, Rick Tocchet, because I know there was something Tocchet said today that stuck out for Farhan. Here's Hughes.
I mean, all those guys had some looks last game, and for the most part, those are going to go in for those guys, and definitely not worried about them. It's game 3, and I know that they want to have a big input on the series, and I know that they're probably expecting to have a really good game tonight. And for myself, I just have to worry about myself and try to bring a good game as well.
Something we've debated this week. Do you believe if the Canucks play that game again, they're like guaranteed a victory?
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean,
you think it's that
for sure?
Because the thing about law of averages and analytics is over a huge sample for sure. This is not a huge sample in a Stanley Cup playoffs. It's a very small sample.
Well,
you could just be snake bit 3 games in a row, and that's that, right? You're off into the summer.
Well, and we saw this with Tampa Columbus, remember? Right?
Yes.
I mean, when Columbus just parked the bus, and that's just the way it went, and they weren't going to fix it.
But Tampa wasn't able to crack it.
No, and so we'll see what adjustments they make, because I do believe that Nashville is going to try to play a little bit differently, right? Andrew Brunette, who I think Ray Ferraro said yesterday has never blocked a shot in his life, probably wasn't overly comfortable with how they played, but they kind of got into that mode in the third and they couldn't get out of it. He's going to want them to play with the puck, get into their transition game, potentially open things up a little more, and that should create some chances for the Canucks. So I think the game's going to have a different look. You certainly don't want it. What happened in the third period would be great if the Canucks could generate like that in the first. Yeah. But, we know some of that was score effects.
Well, but that's somewhat of my point here, Farhan, is if you take away 37-4, that was the shot attempts in the third period at even strength in Vancouver's favor. The rest of the game was 47-32.
Yeah.
That's manageable for Nashville. You can win that game if you're that close. So, I agree with you, though, in terms of Brunette not being comfortable with trying to win the series with that sort of game time and time again here. Still needs 3 more victories. That's a pretty tall mountain to climb playing that style. So I agree with you. You're going to see some changes here from the Nashville side of things stylistically, if not lineup. Let's hear from the head coach, who says he's still confident that his best players are going to step up in this series. Here's Tocchet.
They've had confidence before where they haven't scored, where they've broken out of it. I just feel that a couple of those guys have kind of, I know they seem a little bit nervous sometimes, and I think they just got to play like it's just hockey. Like, don't worry about the stage. Sometimes you get that puck and you're looking for something more. I think you should start shooting the puck more, get in those areas. The proof's in the pudding. They've done it. So just a couple of hiccups here and there, just get back to your game.
You picked up on the word nervous.
Yeah, for him to say that a couple of these guys are nervous and don't worry about the stage, I think those things really stand out, right? I think the Besser, Miller, and Paterson combined for 265 points this year, and they've combined for 2 points in the 2 games so far. And we keep talking about the guys that have had playoff success back in the bubble, but it was a different stage because there actually is a stage now, right? There are fans there to applaud and scream and cheer, and that pressure to score, you feel it differently in a building. And when you do score, that electricity that comes from it, it's all there, right?
And Paterson mentioned as much yesterday, Thursday, quote, "It's probably my first real playoff with all this atmosphere. I've just been so fired up, and maybe I've come away a little bit from what makes me good."
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. And the problem with Paterson, right? And we've gauged him differently than we have the others, because even in game 2 or in the first 2 games of the series, the other guys have really been generating, whereas he hasn't necessarily. And then we picked that up from what's happened with this player since the All-Star break, right?
Yep.
So
it's
tough.
On Besser, he took a shot in practice yesterday. Apparently is going to be fine. But of course, with having some maintenance days towards the end of the year, how concerned are you that Brock has it in him, that he has the physical capacity to make a mark on this series?
Well, he scored late in the season, right? And that mattered, right? Because it showed you that, yeah, is he playing with something? Sure. He did take part in the morning skate today. Even though he took the shot in the hand, and Tocchet said yesterday he didn't even ask him about it. It wasn't mentioned between the two, so I don't know that was serious. But obviously there is something there that he's been playing with. He's taken the maintenance days. He took that final Winnipeg game off. So, he's battling, right? And everyone's going through it at some point. Philip Forsberg hasn't taken part in a morning skate since the All-Star break, and yet he's managing to operate at a pretty high level right now. So if you're on the ice, at the end of the day, you don't get a get out of jail free card. You gotta play.
So what are you most concerned about as the series shifts here to Nashville? Is it the goaltending and Casey DeSmith holding up? Is it Elias Pettersson? Far on the power play is still goalless.
Yeah.
And has been struggling for an awful long time as well. Or is it actually just getting the puck on net as opposed to near the net, as we saw in game 2?
Yeah, I think it's the power play, and I think Pettersson and the power play are somewhat connected, because he gets so many opportunities and he gets a chance to take that shot and he gets a chance to build some momentum. They need him to be better, and they need the power play to be better, right? Like in Casey DeSmith, I don't want to say my expectations are low in that I think he's going to be bad. I don't think he's going to be bad. I just think that he's not going to steal you games, right? And you can't expect him to. I've used the Geno Smith example. You can win with him, but you're not going to win because of him. And they can get that out of Casey DeSmith. Don't expect the 5-alarm save like Thatcher Demko made against Beauvillier in the first game or in the early stages. You won't get that save, but as long as he doesn't let in poor goals, your expectations are for replacement level play. They need their top guys to be their best, and they need their power play to get going.
The power play is going to get Elias Lindholm on the first unit now, which frankly, I'm a little surprised it took to game 3 to get to this spot. I just think he's a better shooter and a better net front guy than Connor Garland. You don't have as many puck battles, wall work on a power play usually if things are going well. So I think that could help today. And because I think I'll give Lindholm credit, since he's come back from the injury, he's been pretty good. Yeah. And I know there was a resignation at one point. Okay, he's just going to be a defensive center, and he's a really good defensive center and face-off man and penalty killer, and all of that brings value and utility to the hockey club. But I still think there's something there to give for him offensively, and I do wonder if getting the power play going is going to fire him up.
Yeah, I think it will, right? And I do agree with you. It's a good fit. And when they brought him here, I think their thought was at that time he'd be the 5th member of the power play. And with Connor Garland, the one thing with him is that he's such a good puck retriever that you lose out on that. And, so much of the power play's problems have been that it's one and done, that they can't generate more off an initial shot, whether it's saved or blocked or misses the net, whereas Connor Garland potentially gives you that. So you lose that a little bit, but he doesn't do the other things as well. And, you talked about them, right? With the net front and just his ability to shoot the puck. So I think he can give him a different dimension, because with Garland, like, teams just don't defend his ability to shoot. When he's got the puck in his hand and he has the puck on his stick a lot, they can sag off.
Yeah. Tread carefully into this topic, Lalji, because it reared its head with Blake a couple times this week after his astonishing prediction that Vasily Podkolzin would be the X factor in this series last week. And I'm like, is he even going to play? It was 70 hits and 2 assists in 19 regular season games. It doesn't look like he's going to play tonight. But you've already mentioned it. You're for Podkolzin circling into the series?
Yeah, and again, Podkolzin can do things that are controllable, right? Like in terms of his ability to forecheck, in terms of his ability to play the body. I think they could use him, right? And usually when you lose a game, it's easy to make a little tweak to the lineup. I think they should have used this as the opportunity.
They still might. They could be. Yeah, I mean, still might. They, might be. It's smoke screen and lying time in the playoffs, right?
Phil hasn't given you anything, and I.
Well, he got you an assist. He's on the Zadorov goal.
He took the.
He also took a bad penalty in the first. Yeah.
I asked Rick Tocchet.
Goaltender, it might have hurt.
I asked Rick Tocchet between games 1 and 2. I said, are you that type of coach that won't change a lineup barring injury?
Good question. It was a great answer too.
Yeah, and he said he wasn't afraid of it.
No,
right?
No.
So,
but he hasn't.
But he hasn't.
He didn't, at least for game 2.
Well, and the margins are so fine with a player like that. Like, it's not like you're injecting a potential goal scorer into the lineup, right? Like you're still injecting in your 12th player that's going to wind up getting 8 minutes a night, and so that's not going to change the game. Tyler Myers getting him back, that could be a game changing.
Big time. Yeah,
not
absolutely.
Decision, but a situation.
They missed Tyler Myers in game 2. I think it was clear. I want to give you your say on this because I know you've done some reporting here.
Yeah.
Sarah Sivian says she's hearing that Thatcher Demko is done for the rest of the playoffs. And you've spoken to people who also believe that.
Yeah. Like there are players in that locker room who don't think he'll be back until next season. Now, I mean, look, players aren't privy to all the information, right? Like they're on a need to know basis with stuff like this. So that doesn't mean they're necessarily right. I'm struggling to believe these things aren't connected at all. Look, the club is doing everything in their power. First of all, they're saying very little publicly, but to whom they are discussing, they want it known this is a separate injury altogether. And I just can't believe they're not somewhat connected, because I do think that Thatcher Demko came back early, right? Thatcher Demko has talked about the fact that he pushed so hard, right? 2-a-days, morning and night, and he training staff for everything they did because he targeted this game early. He was determined to get back. Rick Tocchet has said he was ahead of schedule. So I'm not saying.
Do you think they pushed him too much? Like, do you think he pushed himself too much?
I'm not saying that. I'm not. Like, I don't look. I know this organization has had some issues with injury management last season. The Tanner Pearson thing and what have you. I know that they've had to wear that, and I'm not suggesting that. But every player wants to come back. Every player is aggressive. No player is 100% at this time. But you've also got a player that's had a level of compensatory injury in his career previously, like last year. So I struggle with the thought that none of this is somewhat connected.
Yeah, he's injured. You have to say that. It's sad but true. Is it possible it is two separate, completely unrelated injuries to the same knee? Yes, it's possible.
Is it possible he comes back? Yes, but it's not possible he comes back at 100%. And it's not possible that he comes back without risk of re-injuring it again or another connected part again.
And it's not possible he's back in this series, right?
I don't see that. Second round late is kind of what we're hearing from those that are taking the optimistic view of it, that it could be late second round, but I think it's a stretch.
Last question on this, because Murph in his highlight pack to start game 2 showed the play with the Nashville player crashing into Demko via the Di Giuseppe cross check
earlier in the game. Yeah.
And then the final minute where he just sort of pushes off that left post and looks immediately down at the left knee, and you can tell something is wrong there. Do you think it was a combination of those two things?
Yeah.
Do you think it was just the final minute push off? If it was just the final minute push off, boy, that's a really benign, innocuous play to suffer a new injury on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I'm not a doctor, and I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn last night, for those that know that reference. But
you would, of course, only stay at the Wall Center for.
Of course. And I actually stayed at the Wall Center recently. Did what happened midway through the game on that collision weaken the knee to the point where it just took a tweak late in the game?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, I think it's possible. But look, if it was that, and talking to Kevin Woodley, our goalie guy, if it was that, it screams re-aggravation. If it was just that, you know what I mean? That the knee was on so much on edge that something that small could have led to it. It screams that. But maybe there was more. Maybe it was a cumulative effect. Maybe there was something in practice. Who knows? But if it was just that, it does make you wonder, doesn't it?
Mayor Ken Sim has addressed the lack of outdoor viewing parties. Now, the Canucks are selling tickets to an indoor viewing party for Game 3 and have apparently sold out the lower bowl, so are now selling tickets in the upper bowl. There was no Rogers Arena viewing party for Game 4 because Justin Timberlake is in the house playing the hits. We're the only Canadian city not to have outdoor viewing parties. And we wondered, was this the city not wanting it and the police? Was it the Canucks not wanting it and just wanting to do something that was a revenue generator for them indoors? Was a combination of both. Mayor Sim yesterday, quote, "We have to be incredibly responsible and thoughtful. We have a history of 1994 and 2011. I would love to throw a party right now, but we have to be responsible." He later checked a public safety report authored by Douglas Keefe and John Furlong titled "The Night the City Became a Stadium," and said, quote, "When you look at that report, you could have doubled the number of police officers at the 2011 riot, and it wouldn't have made a difference." It sounds like there's some budgetary concerns in terms of making the amount of police officers that would be required for an outdoor viewing party available as well. My first chance to talk to you about this in some time, my friend. I think something's lost in our city without these things.
Yeah, I agree, right? And you look at a place like Edmonton and Toronto, and they've got stages set up outside their buildings, right? Like whether it's
they have more space, and of course, space is more readily available in pretty much any city than downtown Vancouver.
Absolutely. But again, those places are controllable, right? Like you could even section them off if you need to, so you can have a big viewing party that looks great on television. But then you've got Winnipeg, and they just do it in the streets, right? And you look at the Canucks and the Plaza of Nations, like I still call it that, but that area, it seems like it's still set up where it could handle something like that.
Yeah, like the Concord Pacific lands there, like right across the street.
It feels like
got a massive stage there, and I mean, there's gates there anyways.
Yeah,
right.
I'd love to see it, and something is lost. And at some point, look, if this team goes on a run, at some point you do need to address it.
And here's the other thing, Mayor Sim is very new to politics, right? Like this isn't a career politician dyed in the wool. So I do wonder whether he's a little bit more nervous than your typical mayor would be.
Mayor Sim is a real sports fan.
Oh, like that much we know. That much we know.
Real sports fan.
Yeah. I just don't think he's willing to spend the political capital, lest, heaven forbid, something go wrong.
The challenge, though,
that's what I got from listening to Mayor Sim yesterday.
I suppose, but it just gets worse and worse every round, right? Like the risk becomes worse and worse every round.
Well,
so
and what I think,
do it right now and kind of build to something.
What I think is that the city, and the Canucks may be on this board too, I don't know, but what I think is the city looks at it and goes, I think we can get away with not doing it in round one.
Potentially.
Let's only go down this road when the citizenry is absolutely screaming for it. And while I think a lot of people want this, I'm not sure it's at the tipping point politically for them at this stage of the game. And not to mention cost as well, because there is a cost to having to deploy the number of police officers you're going to have to deploy, not to mention emergency services, something goes wrong. There is a lot of potential costs involved here as well, which I also get. So I think it's conservative. I think it's a little bit that, Sim doesn't want to put out the political capital, and without necessarily the screaming demand for it just yet.
What about the Delta one? Like they did have one.
Delta and Poco both have outdoor viewing parties.
And how have they gone?
Pretty well, is my understanding. The images I saw from the Delta one for game one, it was quite small, almost an apples to eggs comparison to what it would be on the Concord Pacific lands or, somewhere else in downtown Vancouver. At least I would suspect. I mean, if it's pouring rain night, maybe you don't get a lot of people out, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is such a great city, and I hate that this is the reputation.
I hate it too. I hate it too. I hate all the riot jokes. I hate that their mistakes were repeated in 2011. And again, something has been lost here. Okay, let's move on. Anticipating the same lineup for Nashville, we did wonder whether all the shot blocking would take its toll. And look, again, smoke season, lying season, who knows? We'll check the game time lineups a little closer to puck drop, but anticipating the same Nashville for lineup for Nashville. How about Andrew Burnett? Commit to the pain. That seems to be the slogan now. Apparently,
Well, Rick Tocchet said the same thing earlier, right? That you've got to embrace that before the series started.
There was even some seats available at Bridgestone Arena as of yesterday, according to our buddy Rob Williams, Rob the hockey guy. Here's the other thing. There's been some complaints about the enthusiasm of the crowd in Toronto and Edmonton. They're really accustomed to round one now, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
There's been no complaints about the enthusiasm of our crowd. Interested to see what Nashville's going to be like. I think it'll be good. I don't think it will get to the same level as we saw here in Vancouver. Today's a big anniversary, Farhan. The dragon slaying.
Oh,
Alex Burrows against the Blackhawks. Overtime game 7, round 1, 2011. And you told me we had a conversation.
remember, like it was yesterday.
I don't remember this.
Clearly, I don't make an impact on you.
No,
so Matthew and I were outside gate 9 at Rogers Arena in the intermission before the overtime. And we were talking about this, right? Because how did we get here? They had a 3-0 lead. This thing was done and dusted.
Mhm.
They're going to lose to Chicago.
They had a lead and a power play in the dying seconds when Jonathan Taves went around the goal with the net empty and somehow scored a shorty to tie the damn thing.
You know, and if you know me, you know I'm not a cheerleader, right? Like that's not how I'm wired. Other than the University of Washington football team fandom left me long ago. And
so cynical.
No, I'm not. Like, look, I love the city, and I'd love for the city to get a chance to celebrate.
Ditto.
But in terms of the brand and the players and all of that, and 2011, I felt such a personal attachment to the Twins. I don't have that for anybody here. So in 2011,
there are no Daniel and Henrik Sedins on the current team.
No, in 2011, we went outside and I said, God, Matthew, I do not want to tell this story. Like, I don't want to tell the choke story that, I'd have to go through this. And if they choke here, like, the core's got to get busted and AV is going to get fired and all of these things are going to happen. And oh my God, can we just not tell the negative story once? And you said to me at the time that story, like it or not, is always the better story.
Now, if I said that, I meant it. Right? And if I said that, I meant it in terms of
journalism,
of having.
Yeah, like it wasn't like
I
you
don't
were
remember saying that. I guess I'm pretty cynical as well.
He didn't want him to lose. It was as a journalist, that's the story. That's the emotion. That's the gutting. And he's not wrong.
I'll tell you.
I just didn't want it. I didn't want it.
I'll tell you what that probably came from a selfish place because, first of all, when you're a newspaper reporter on deadline, particularly when you're filing to Eastern deadlines, as I was with the Globe and Mail, there was a BC edition. The first story has to hit immediately at the end of the game. And you get a shorthanded empty net goal to force overtime. That creates a lot of chaos in your life. So suddenly the story you're about to hit send on needs like 200 to 300 words different at the top. So that's a stressful. So I probably refashioned the story and had the Canucks lose, Canucks choke story ready to go.
Yeah.
And at that point, just didn't want to have to fashion. But sure enough, the goal goes in.
Oh my goodness.
From Burrows. And now I'm scrambling again. And anyways, eventually filed. It was absolutely, I'm here to say today, absolutely the better story. Don't anybody for a second think.
Well, the way it happened, there's no doubt it was the better story.
Absolutely the better story.
Better call Jim Houston or Shorty? The Exorcism versus Slay the Dragon.
No, Shorty.
Yeah. And Huey's wonderful, but that was.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of calls, the tributes continue to pour in for Bob Cole, who passed away Thursday at age 90. Of course, the iconic voice of Hockey Night in Canada, and really every big hockey moment for several generations in his role as lead play-by-play man for the CBC, including from his longtime broadcast partner, former Vancouver Canucks head coach and executive Harry Neal. Harry Neal, speaking to Lance Hornby of the Toronto Sun, quote, "He got more excited for a game than many players did. A Hall of Fame broadcaster, a great friend. How he'd have managed today with the color commentators talking through his play-by-play, I don't know. He always straight arms me if I did." Bob was known for the Heisman. He had very distinct lines for how a two-person play-by-play booth should work. When the puck is dropped and there's action going on, the play-by-play man speaks, and only the play-by-play man. And when the whistle blows and there's a break in the action, the color guy talks, and only the color guy. We were talking yesterday that unlike a lot of play-by-play people you hear today, Bob Cole wasn't going to like tell stories. Like there wasn't going to be a, I was talking to so-and-so the other day and blah, blah. That was not Colesy. He wasn't going to get into analyzing the play more so than, Canucks are 0 for 4 on the power play today. They got to get going. Like that was the extent of the analysis you were going to get from Bob, but he was going to describe the action on the ice in a most unique, haunting way. I want to give you a moment or two to talk about the legendary figure of Bob, that is Bob Cole.
But think about how many imitations of Bob Cole included. Here we go, Harry.
Yeah.
Because he was teeing Harry up, right? Yeah. So Harry was tagged on to so many of these. And, I remember I was an 8-year-old and I remember they're going home and certainly Gio Sakic, that has to be it. In 2002 was amazing.
The Mario call against
Minnesota. Oh. No question. So, there were some great ones. And for me, I always just found him to be a very gracious man. I had a chance to talk to him and, have dinners with him, in the media meals and things like that from time to time over the years. Got to know his daughter, Megan, at the 2006 Olympics in Turin. And then, had some conversations with the two of them during that. And just, he was just a good man, and even when he got older and sometimes didn't see the players as well, he still brought that energy and he still had that emotion. And he took us back in time to a different type of call and, a different type of mythology.
Yeah.
Even in
for sure,
even in this decade. So he'll be missed. He's a good man.
I had the conversation with Shorty many times. There's in fact a lot of little Easter eggs in Shorty's calls if you've got a keen ear and know the history of hockey broadcasting in this country. But every time Shorty says, here come the Canucks, 3 of them, that is sort of a
Bob
tribute,
Cole.
a testament to Bob Cole. The other thing about Bob, and I think it's fair to say he was a little bit shy. He wasn't gregarious in bigger circles. And certainly the volume was a little lower. But he talked and conversed like he broadcast.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, no, that was him.
The play-by-play you hear was very much the way sort of Bob talked to people, as I recall.
Yeah, and I knew him later in his career when the voice was always big, right? It wasn't shy or necessarily reserved, but you are right.
No, in small circles with people he knew, you were getting the full Bob Cole experience.
Yeah, no, it was real. It was authentic. And I don't know whether or not he became the character or the character became him. You know what I mean? Because sometimes there's a blending of that when you do something for such a long period of time. I'm sure you and I will have it when we're in that age where we talk like we're on air. I don't know. But, my interactions with Mr. Cole, that was the voice, that was the personality that you got.
I will forever remember here in 2010, Brian Williams on the control desk. I mean, the other icon, right? Brian Williams at the Olympic control desk. And we're going to Hockey Canada Place, right?
Yeah.
And Brian says, Bob, I think the last time I threw to you at an Olympic Games was 1984 in Los Angeles for the volleyball. And Bob went, oh, Brian. And, knowing Brian as I do, I think he was hoping for, Colesy to go down memory lane with him, but that was not Bob. No. He wasn't going to do that. He was going to set the scene there from Hockey Canada Place. Anyways, we will miss him. He was absolutely somebody who made you fall in love with hockey. You listen to his calls on Saturday nights, and he brought a spirit and energy to the game that few did before or since.
You should talk to Glenn Healy about their prep conversations, right?
My goodness.
Where they would go through pronunciations of names, and Bob wanted them pronounced a certain way.
Yes,
and you had to come in line.
Hey, he was the quarterback. He was running that booth, right? Yeah. If you were in that booth, you were in Bob Cole's chart.
Have you had Shannon on in the last?
We're gonna have John early next week. I texted with John a little bit. I saw his tweet that he was heartbroken.
Yeah.
John has said to me in private that he still once a week would talk to Bob Cole in St. John's. Once a week would talk to Dick Irvin in Montreal. He keeps up with all his old colleagues there at Hockey Night in Camp. We will talk to Bob and we'll talk to John and get his memories of Bob Cole later next week. Hockey heads, get ready. The daily face-off playoff parlay challenge. Each game day, answer 4 questions. Pick the winning team. Guess if points will be over or under. Predict the first goal. Choose the highest scoring period. You do all that, daily winners, they snag gift cards. Each round winners, they pocket cash. Play now. Games.dailyfaceoff.com and prove your puck prowess. Let's get to today's menu. It is brought to you by Greta. We will be at Greta Friday, 4:30 p.m., Sunday, 2 p.m. Watch party. Get your tickets, $10, nationgear.ca. We're raising money Friday for the BC Mental Health Foundation. Going to do some trivia, have some fun in the intermissions. Got some giveaways. I've got a box of swag, hats, T-shirts. I got to give them away to somebody. Come on down to Greta, 50 West Cordova. Let's have a blast watching from afar. We're going to be joined here by Frank Seravalli. Frank is in Nashville covering the series, and we will get to J-Pat as well. Jeff also in Nashville covering the series. With Jeff, everything from this morning, everything about what has to happen here in these 2 games for the Vancouver Canucks in Nashville. With Frank, many of the same topics, of course. There is one story going on right now, and it's this playoff series. But also, Frank slid by Salt Lake City on his way to Nashville to cover the big inaugural event for the Utah Hockey Club in the National Hockey League. And he has some strong thoughts on how it's going to work down there in Utah. All right. One bit of business left here. It is our Bet365 best bets, Farhan. And I'm going to start us off here on the Canucks Predators series. Ray Ferraro on the show yesterday said he wouldn't be surprised if this game 3, opens up and if the series opens up from here. Backup goaltender in for the Canucks, stars waiting to break out, Nashville intent on providing a little bit more of an offensive threat than they did game 2. So I'm going to go over 5.5 goals, and that's paying 1.90 on my Bet365 best bet. Where are you headed?
I'm going for the stars to break out. And we're going to start with JT Miller, who has he's been so close on so many occasions in this series. I'm going to pick JT Miller to score the first goal of tonight's hockey game. And that pays out at 10-1.
10-1. It's pretty good. We're thrilled to welcome Bet365 as our sports betting partner just in time for the 2024 playoffs here. We'll be here with Bet365 to provide all the news, analysis, lines, betting options for the playoffs until one team is left in June. Bet365, the largest betting platform globally. Open an account with Bet365 and use the promo code VANBONUS, all one word, VANBONUS, to bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Frank Seravalli coming up next.
In a season like this, you never want to miss a single second of what's happening on the ice, and you want to be around your fellow fans, right? Well, Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova, the perfect spot to do so. Hey, if you've got tickets, a great place to pre and post. They've got drink specials every single day. And if you don't have tickets, well, stick around and soak up the atmosphere with all your fellow fans, play all the great video games and air hockey, great air hockey setup as well at Greta Bar YVR. We'll see you there, 50 West Cordova. The Vancouver Canadians are back at the net. Catch fireworks, giveaways, and Friday nooners all spring and summer long. Get your tickets at CanadiansBaseball.com.
Our next guest brought to you by the Arnold Palmer. Our next guest brought to you by the Arnold Palmer Design Whistler Golf Club. Counting down to opening day on May 10th. Club reminds organizers of groups of 12 or more. Now is the time to lock in those tee times for the 2024 season. And just by reaching out to reserve a tee time, you, the organizer, you play for free. Tell us about your groups. Whistler Golf will take care of the rest. WhistlerGolf.com/groups. And of course, follow all the spring preparations, including the Bears, the roly-poly Bears, at Whistler Golf on social media. Here he is, the host of the Frankly Speaking podcast, Daily Faceoff, NHL Insider, from Nashville, Tennessee, Mr. Frank Seravalli. How you
How are
doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Yeah. So you made a pit stop in Salt Lake City. That looked fun.
Yeah, it was on the way-ish, I would say. I mean, you have to go south and east, so I figured from Vancouver, quick stop in Salt Lake, get a sense of what things are like in Utah, and it was an amazing experience. Really glad I did. And now here, set and ready for Game 3.
Yeah. So talk to me about Game 3, Frank. First of all, your take on what happened in Game 2, and are you of the mind the Canucks just play that game again and they should be on the winning side?
I think so. It felt like a lot of things that piled up kind of against them, whether it was, starting with the Demko injury before the game, a broken stick for JT Miller at an inopportune time, a lot of frustration that seemed to build up for this team that I'm curious to see what their body language is like to start this game. I'm a big believer in that. And will Elias Paterson stop flogging himself? I'm not sure that it's in his nature to not do so, but if you're looking for a bright spot, if you're a Canucks fan heading into Game 3, the fact that Paterson, Miller, Besser, and Quinn Hughes all haven't scored yet in this series is probably a pretty good omen. I like the chances and opportunities that they had. The Preds were holding on for dear life, and I think there were a couple varying points in Game 2 where it could have gone an entirely different way, and that's not how it works, but I generally believe process over everything.
Yeah, so much self-flagellation. Elias Paterson would make a good member of Opus Dei with what's going on in this series. Thatcher Demko, what's the latest? What are you hearing on the Demko injury?
Nothing new from what I shared the other day when I joined you guys in studio. He's here in Nashville. He is rehabbing, I guess, is the best way to frame it. Part of that is just time and rest. And he remains, to my knowledge, a possibility to come back these playoffs, I believe, at some point in round 2, should the Canucks play that far. And by no means has anyone told me or given me any indication that Demko is done for the rest of the season.
How much big picture concern would there be or should there be, though, right? I mean, when you look at his situation, he's almost at the point where you're going to start calling him injury prone. Not you, but, the collective. And this injury clearly wasn't 100%, which led to a reoccurrence here.
Totally disagree. You don't think one injury is connected to the other in the same spot? Zero.
Okay. Do you worry about him coming back at less than 100% and potentially doing long-term damage?
I don't think the Canucks would let that happen. He's too valuable of a property. I think it's not even that it's a super significant injury. It's just that there's nothing that you can really do to manipulate it to get to the point where you can try and battle through it. You're either ready or you're not. And he just needs time.
Yeah. And for me, I worry about Thatcher trying to battle through, not because he can't, but we've seen it even when last year, let's take that injury, for example, when he came into the season after what he dealt with a year ago, it forced him to make adjustments to his technique, which then led to further injury. So for me,
that's a different, but you're combining now 3 different injuries.
No,
and so
you're right.
I agree with you. I think there were significant concerns with the way he was never right to start last season.
Yeah.
And then his workload was off the charts. He started actually last season, spent most of the preseason and summer in Vancouver working with Ian Clark. Then he gets to a point in the season where he doesn't think he can do it anymore and continues to push and battle through, and then had to come to a full stop. And then obviously came back at the end of the year and played well again. He had a normal summer, and then this year hit the ground running, ran into the knee injury, took his time and was patient coming back, and then now has a totally different injury to the same part of the body, but totally different and unrelated. Like the two, I can't really say anymore, but the two they're not even close.
I understand what you're saying. I just don't see a scenario.
Knee. It's the same knee though, right, Frank?
It is the same knee.
Yeah.
It's the left knee. But I just can't imagine a scenario where he comes back and not, like Thatcher's a competitive guy. I can't imagine that if he comes back, that he would be 100% dialed in. And I appreciate what you're saying in terms of the organization, but they went through this a year ago where it kind of felt like he was 100% coming back in. But if
the temptation of him riding to the rescue in round 2 would be pretty big.
And look, I just you hit the nail on the head when you just talked about how valuable he was to the organization, and you just wonder. I mean, I know everyone's competitive at this stage, but I just I can't imagine that he would save himself. Someone needs to save this guy because he's so competitive.
I think that's fair.
I don't. I think they'll save him. I do. Okay. And you know what? The reason for that is perspective. Do the Canucks have aspirations this year? 100%. Even with a fully healthy Thatcher Demko, if they're playing the Oilers in round 2, they're probably not the favorites anyway. Even with a fully healthy Thatcher Demko, they might not beat the Oilers anyway. So there's no sense in risking a goalie in his prime on one of the best contracts in the league.
Oh yeah.
And tanking next season and beyond of prime years of Hughes, Paterson, and everyone else for that. I just don't see it happening. I'm sorry.
Is Paterson dealing with something?
Not to my knowledge. I think there's been lots of talk. Hey, are the Canucks banged up? What's up with Quinn Hughes and his shoulder? Is there anything going on with Philip Hronek? I mean, look, you get to this time of year, there's always question marks. No one has said explicitly or even hinted or whispered at the idea that something's wrong with Paterson. I look at him and I say, it appears to be squarely between his ears.
Yeah, I think it's clearly a confidence matter, whether it's beyond that. Yeah. Just one last thing on Demko to both of you. I heard the last round of rehab here to get back for that Calgary game, final week of the regular season. I heard that was pretty intense. Like they were putting him through 2-a-days effectively with Ian Clark. Did anybody pick up anything with regards to the workload during the rehab process, perhaps affecting him and leading?
Let me reiterate for the 1,000th time on this hit. It has nothing to do with the previous injury.
No, I understand.
0.
I'm not saying the injuries are connected. I'm just wondering whether or not the player was fully ready to come back or had been worked to the point of exhaustion, which allowed for a second injury to happen. Did anybody hear anything? Did anybody pick up anything?
What does allow for a second injury to happen? It's not related.
All right.
What does that mean? I don't. How much more clearly do you want me to be? How much?
Yeah,
more
look,
that he could have used more time. That they rushed back to get him some regular season games before the playoffs started, and in retrospect, if they had had more time, he would have been out more time.
I disagree with the notion because if it were the playoffs, he would have been back 2 weeks before that. They actually took their time. It wasn't a super serious injury that he was dealing with at the end of the regular season. They gave him, how many weeks did he miss?
Missed 5.
He could have been back in 3 if it were the playoffs. And they took their time. They gave him extra time. Was it intense? Everything that Ian Clark does is intense.
It's fair.
There are no half measures or half miles when it comes to the Canucks and how their goalies work. They're notorious for that around the league. But does that have anything to do with what happened here in game 1? No, it doesn't.
Mm-hmm. What would you worry most about here in Nashville, Frank? The goaltending and how Casey DeSmith holds up, this power play that doesn't yet have a goal, Paterson actually getting the puck on the goal as opposed to just near the goal. What would be your chief concern for the Canucks as they play games 3 and 4 in Nashville?
It's honestly just mindset. I liked the process. I liked the compete. I thought for not scoring, JT Miller was excellent in the first 2 games. There's a lot of good things to focus on. Part of it seems like it's going to be trying to wear down this Nashville team. There's the phrase that Andrew Brunette used, they have a commitment to pain. And I thought that was a really nice way of framing how the Preds are looking at and thinking about this series. I think the Canucks need a similar mindset and commitment to how they're going to score, because that's really maybe the unwritten or less spoken about thing about this Canucks team, is more or less how they do at times struggle to score, and they do, struggle to get the puck over the line. It can look great, it can look fancy, but it doesn't always need to be. And at times, this time of year especially, that's seemingly when you can make magic happen, is when you've got a commitment to paying to score.
What about Nashville at home? Andrew Brunette said after the last game he didn't like the fact that they basically didn't have the puck at all in the entire third period and wants them to play differently. This team is known for kind of an up-tempo style and how they break the puck out and how they want to play off the rush. So do they attempt to play differently now that they're at home, and also potentially have last change, and how that might affect matchups?
They should. I don't think Andrew Brunette's going to be chasing anything. I'd be surprised. In terms of this is another way that I look at the first two games, is that I didn't look at one part of the way Nashville played and thought, oh, they're in control. It was almost like I don't know if it's quite fair to compare it to the way the Kings play, which is like, hey, in order for us to beat the Oilers, we've got to sit back and go in our 1-3-1 and just hope and pray and wish. It feels like the way the Preds are looking at this series, they're almost conceding that they're not as good as the Canucks, and that there is a lot of hoping and wishing going on. And as mentioned in that third period, hanging on for dear life. When your first shot is the empty netter that hits the back of the net, that's an indication of the push that the Canucks had, but it's also more so an indication of how I think Nashville is thinking about this.
Yeah, 37-4, the shot attempts at even strength.
Unreal.
In the third period. Frank, what about Lotto line here? We're asking that as our poll question. If Paterson continues to struggle, if goals continue to be a problem, could you see them reuniting Lotto line permanently, not just the flashes that we've seen in the opening two games?
I'd like to see it.
Yeah, so would I.
I think the longer you go without finding success, you have to put everything on the table.
Yep, I'm with you. You ain't got time to bleed. It's like a baseball manager, stud pitcher. If he's not going in the second inning in a playoff game, you got to go get him, regardless of what he's done for you in the past, right? You ain't got time to bleed. You got to manage these games a little differently than you would a regular season game. Lastly, just circling back on your Salt Lake experience, I think that could be a really good market for the league.
I don't think I know.
Yeah. Oh, do you know? You're that confident?
I'm telling you, getting there and seeing fans wrapped around that building just for a 1 hour show to meet the team, a bunch of guys in suits, NHL jerseys of all denominations, that building was electric. They were flocking to merchandise stands to buy gear that quite literally just has the NHL shield on it and the word Utah.
It's amazing that Gary
buys that.
It's amazing that Gary's been able to fall forward like this, right? Because Arizona was all about him and his refusal to let go of the market, and he still hasn't. And he's fallen forward into this Utah situation, which, you can say what you want, and I have, right, about players choosing to live in Arizona and now being forced to live in Salt Lake. But from a hockey perspective, and Salt Lake's a nice city, it's a little, a little different culturally, but in terms of as a hockey market, I totally agree. I mean, I think I think Salt Lake's going to be a home run.
Yeah, look, they've got to figure out the arena situation. They're going to massively renovate it, apparently, to make it 17,000 seats. And it's already been, it's already been modernized inside, which is nice. It's affluent. It's young and vibrant. It's one of the youngest states in the U.S. And I just think seeing the look on the players' faces, that to me told me everything, because there's this unique sort of feeling out process in the arena. Those fans wanted to know, hey, what are these guys all about? And then the players are like, well, hey, most of us have never been to Utah before. What does this place look like? How are the people? And are they excited to see us? And it kind of felt like you know, that scene in Step Brothers where they're like, hey, did we just become best friends? Like there was like an instant connection to team and market. And I have zero doubt. I want to see how Bill Armstrong and Andre Tournier work with actual resources.
Yes.
I mean, you can grade them on their success or failures in the NHL, but now do it, you know, working for a seemingly actual sane owner and well-funded one. And you can say what you want about Gary Bettman and the 2 decades in the desert. I wrote today, I think this is maybe his most savvy heist because there have been unquestioned failures in Arizona. However, he was dealing with an owner 6 weeks ago who did not want to sell his team and was potentially threatening years of litigation.
Yep.
To get out of there and to now take the 32nd team, the problem child, weakest link in the chain, and now make it a strength.
Yep.
That's a huge win.
Yeah. Look, two minds on Bettman in Arizona. Number one, commend him in the league office for having the commitment to the market that they did have. It would have been easy to relocate that franchise years ago. They didn't want to do that for the few hockey fans that they had in Arizona. Did they throw good money at after bad at that franchise? Yes. Was it ever going to work? I think the writing was on the wall decades ago that it wasn't a good market for ice hockey and was going to fail. But
I disagree with that notion, though. I do think it's a good market. I think they've never been set up for success. They've never had an arena that's located in a proper place that's built for hockey.
But Frank, to me,
they've
that's
never won.
Canard.
What have they had to cheer for?
To me, the arena thing is a bit of canard. The arena in Glendale was absolutely beautiful. Now, it may have been inconvenient, but if you love hockey enough, you will get there. And they did not.
How many people are driving an hour after the game to get home? I don't know about you, but I'm not driving an hour to see a regular season hockey game for a team that stinks, that has no chance to win.
I agree. Like I just think that they'll go to Glendale for football. They'll go for the NFL, but not for the NHL. And I mean, it's like, are we going to Abbotsford for the Canucks on a regular basis if they were bad?
Yeah. Anyways,
are you going to Abbotsford?
No, well, that's my point, right? I'm just saying that.
No, but that's
we'd watch on TV because it's a passionate
it's an
market.
AHL to NHL comparison.
No, but I'm saying if his Farhan's question is legitimate, if the
Canucks
NHL Canucks played in Abbotsford, would you go?
If the NHL Canucks played in Abbotsford,
yes. Would everybody flock to Abbotsford and be inconvenienced? I mean, look, now we've got a big population in the Valley, and that was supposed to happen in Glendale, which never did, right? So we want the convenience of downtown.
But that's it. Like, if you have enough hockey fans, the location of the arena doesn't really matter as much.
Yeah, but it did. You're from Ottawa. It was bad in Canada.
Yeah. Right.
It's still bad, and it's still
in a great place. It's not in a great place, but it's a hockey market. No, the attendance isn't great now. They've had bad teams, but it's still a hockey market. Like in Phoenix, it was embarrassing, the attendance. And not to mention how few people were actually watching the games on television.
How many good Sens teams? Like, come on. Well,
no,
so the Sens have gotten to a cup final, a conference final, all those things in the last 2 decades. What have the Coyotes done? Right.
Well, in the case of Ottawa, really small market. And number two, the chief employer cannot buy seats, right? Because the federal government has ethics rules around, buying up suites and things like that and giving away tickets. So there are some specific challenges in Ottawa. Look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's a great NHL market. It's not. I'm not going to sit here and tell you the arena's in the best place. It is not. But, draw a circle around the Canadian Tire Center and you've got scores and scores of hockey fans. Do the same in any arena in the metropolitan Phoenix area. And I'm just not sure you do.
Well, here's what I would say.
They certainly weren't watching games on television. So
just as we would grade now Bill Armstrong and Andre Tournier on their ability to work with actual support, I'd like to grade that market on a proper arena location and a good team.
All right. Fair enough. Lastly, did you get a sense of what the leading name in the clubhouse is for the Utah team?
Nope. They're gonna. There was a chant of Utah Yetis in the arena.
Ah,
There seems to be a
Yetis.
groundswell of support for that, but
I think.
they are going to do a bracket challenge and have
Oh, wow.
8 teams where they select the team name. The fans will select the team name. Now, I'd be curious to see which team selected 8 names make it into that bracket,
Right,
and then
right.
exactly how the
That's
bracket
always
is
the case.
structured.
always-
And I'd like to see some transparent voting. But let's see how that
Ditto.
unfolds.
Ditto. Hey, what we said yesterday was like, once you go Kraken, you can go Yeti, right? Like Kraken opened the door to Yeti. One mythical creature, and the next franchise coming in goes mythical creature.
I just want a creature. I want something. What is a Washington Capital? What is a Philadelphia Philly? I mean, you need something to hang on to, some fierceness.
So
and
Utah Hockey Club isn't going to work for you.
doesn't do it for me. I mean, maybe if we were in Copenhagen, I could see that. but-
Look, these people here are buying T-shirts that have 7 letters on them. NHL and Utah.
So they've doubled.
Utah Hockey Club may actually work. for
They've
them.
doubled the merchandising opportunity. This was great.
They're literally buying like their hoodies that just is a giant NHL shield. Could you imagine walking around in Vancouver that just was like, hey, it just says NHL shield and
Hey,
Vancouver.
Not
Rob-
the NHL Shield.
Rob
Zero
Lowe at the
chance.
Super Bowl with the NFL hat on. You remember?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Hey, great stuff, Frank. Thank you for this. You're going to join me Sunday post game, so I appreciate that. Thanks for the time.
See you guys.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now. Hey, you. No, not you. You. Are you an owner operator? You have a fleet of trucks or cars? Well, CalPro Plus might be the dedicated tire program just for you.
Free program includes exclusive deals and savings, price match guarantee, flexible financing, and preferred pricing on everything you drive.
Also, you get a dedicated member support line. That means that you can get questions answered. Also, they'll source and recommend the right tire for you, your application, and your budget.
Cal Tire's network of 260 plus stores are here to help so you can focus on the road ahead. Sign up for free at calproplus.com. Northlands Golf Course. Download the free app and book tee times with a touch of your thumb. And while you're on course, open the app for hole-by-hole GPS and track your score. 6 to 90-day reservations. Jump the queue. Lock in your date for $10 per player booking fee. Limited daily availability. Check it all out. golfnorthlands.com. Jeff Paterson, our Canucks reporter, host of Rinkwide Vancouver, and he's on the ground there in Nashville and joining us from Bridgestone Arena. First and foremost, how's the town, Jeff? Looks fun.
Yeah, I was able to get out onto Broadway last night. Controlled. I'm here for a few days, so you got to ease into it. But it was a long day. There was no easy way to get here. I transferred through Dallas. I had to sprint through the airport. I'm glad you guys didn't get video of that, literally with bags in tow, running to make my connector. But I did, and I'm here and on the ground in Nashville. And yeah, I was out on Broadway is the main drag there. And as you can see with the video, it ends, and there's Bridgestone Arena. So it's an incredible setup, and place is going to be hopping tonight, no doubt about that.
Yeah, is the town is the atmosphere already arrived, or are you expecting that later Friday?
Yeah, I think you get a sense. It's like most cities, car flags and storefronts that have Predators merch and lots of signage around. Again, it's Nashville's marathon this weekend as well, so there's going to be a lot of people in town here. Not all for the hockey game, but it is a big party town, and I can imagine the mood and the vibe out on the street after this game, if in fact the Canucks, or rather the Predators, are able to take their first lead in this series. So it'll spill out at Bridgestone and right out onto Broadway. Should be a big Friday night here, regardless of the outcome of the hockey game. But if the Preds win, I would think the mood would be just that much better.
And one more question before we get on to the hockey. I saw you tweet you're expecting some star power on the anthem, are you?
Well, it's kind of funny. On the game notes, they've got a name down for the Canadian anthem, and under the Star Spangled Banner, it just says TBA. And we know that on that Stanley Cup run back in 2017, certainly the town of Nashville, the city of Nashville, caught Predators fever. And I think a lot of the star power here in the music industry wanted in. So this is their first home playoff game of this Stanley Cup playoff run. And yeah, I think the TBA probably tells you that they have twisted somebody's arm to come out and try and set the tone with a big anthem here tonight.
No shortage of talented singers in that town.
No, and my daughter is annoyed. I told her that they were actually making Tim McGraw tickets available to members of the media. Could you imagine that happening here? No. Anyways, and she'd already been to the Tim McGraw concert here. She's 12 years old, massive country music fan, and she said, "Dad, you mean like you had a chance to take me to the Tim McGraw concert in Nashville, and you're not flying me over there?" I am not Father of the Year material, Jeff. Tyler Myers skated today. Does he look any worse for wear after his bout with the flu?
Well, he was one of the guys that opted out of the morning skate, but he practiced fully yesterday. And afterwards, Rick Tocchet said no reason to believe that he won't be good to go tonight. So, fairly sparsely attended, optional here after the full day of practice. But I thought it was interesting to see the star power that was out on the ice with Quinn Hughes and JT Miller, Brock Besser, who left practice a little bit early yesterday. And there's, still this idea that he's battling through something that left him behind when they made the trip to Winnipeg there in game 82 late in the season. So Besser took part and was fully involved as much as you can be in an optional skate. And, it's all about sort of getting the blood rushing and getting the feel of the puck. And, it was quick. I don't think anybody was out there for more than about 20 minutes this morning. 3 goaltenders on the ice with Thatcher Demko here on the trip, but he was not one of the ones on the ice. So 10 skaters and 3 goaltenders. That was the head count at morning skate, and now it's almost go time.
Our poll question, we were asking about whether or not the Canucks should reunite the Lotto line full time, or at least to start the game, because we're seeing more and more ice time for them together. We even saw some defensive zone draws in the last game. Nils Höglander gets benched for 14 and a half minutes to finish the game. So we saw more Lotto line. Does it make sense given where this team's at offensively right now?
I've been a little disappointed that when Rick Tocchet has gone to Lotto line, we really haven't seen much from those guys. And certainly there hasn't been a bottom line yet. And that is the biggest story of this series through 2 games for me, is the fact that the Canucks have 5 20-goal scorers on the roster, and not one of them has found the back of the net. Now, going through game notes from the regular season, and again, regular season is over, and you throw a lot of that stuff out the window, but there was not a 3-game stretch at any point over 82 games where one of JT Miller, Brock Besser, or Elias Paterson didn't score a goal. So we're sitting on 2 right now, and we'll see what happens. I guess if you go back game 82, they didn't score there, but Besser didn't play, so I'm not really counting that one and these first 2, but they've been consistent. Now we know that Elias Paterson hasn't been so consistent since the All-Star break, but just the overarching theme is that one of those 3 guys generally comes through for the Vancouver Canucks at some point, and so it sort of feels like a matter of time on that front. I don't know that you need to go full-time with Lotto line. In fact, I would probably vote against that at this stage of the series. I think desperation may set in, and Rick Tocchet may have to look in a different direction at some point. But I think he's leaning on the fact that 84 shot attempts. Quinn Hughes had 13 of them. JT had 10. Elias Pettersson had 9. Like, you want the puck on the stick of those guys in shooting positions. And so I think you just have to think, if they can get anywhere close to that number, that something's going to happen for some of their top end players in terms of goal scoring. So I wouldn't reunite Lotto line, maybe situationally, but I wouldn't go there full time yet, because I do think the Canucks believe that depth is still on their side. It's just a question of, can that depth show up and ultimately put the puck in the net, or are we going to be sitting here after game number 3 still waiting for some of the Canucks' best players to announce their arrival in this series? Well,
one of them, Nils Höglander. I mean, we talked about him getting benched in the last game. You wrote about him the other day on Canucks Army. 3 of the 5 20-goal scorers didn't even register a shot on goal. Höglander didn't register an attempt, period. What do we expect from this player right now, and how do you think the coach is going to respond to him? I mean, after benching him in the 3rd period.
Yeah, I think he's going to start again on that line with Elias Pettersson and Ilya Mikheyev, but we saw in game 1 that Lafferty started there and Tocchet didn't wait long to make the switch. So in terms of, a top 6 role for Nils Höglander, and he's been there really for, since Christmas for this hockey club, but I don't know that his spot is absolutely locked in there. And he scored 24 goals for them, but he hasn't looked anything like that player through 2 games. Now, big stage, first look at NHL playoff action, all of that, but put the goals aside for a second. Like, the way that he played against the Calgary Flames in the final week of the regular season when the Canucks locked down the Pacific Division title, He was a thorn in their side. He was in the middle of absolutely everything. They were chasing him around the ice. Where's that Nils Höglander? Like, if he does those types of things, get him into the game, get him involved, and then maybe from there some of the offense will flow. But that's been the shock to me. And you're right, I wrote about it at Canucks Army, is like, yeah, you'd like offensive production, but I'm just amazed that we haven't seen the pest, the thorn in the side, the guy that, will give a stick to take a stick and all that kind of stuff. Like, where's that? This is a player that wins just about every puck battle he's in. And for quite frankly, I haven't even seen him involved in the puck battles, so he hasn't had a chance to come out with the puck. Yeah, they need more. Like, if you're in uniform, I don't care if you're a young player, if you have vast experience and have been through the battles, if you're in uniform here, you've got 2 games under your belt now. It's go time. Like, Canucks just can't afford to keep waiting for some of these guys to show up and do what it is that they did in the regular season that allowed this team to win as much as it did and collect the 109 points.
Yeah, it's been quite a baptism for Höglander in his first Stanley Cup playoffs. Jeff, your biggest concern as this series shifts to Nashville, would it be goaltending in Casey DeSmith? Is it Paterson? Is that power play that is yet to score? Or is it actually getting pucks on the goal as opposed to near the goal? What would be your biggest concern here?
I think it's the top end of this Canucks lineup that hasn't been good enough. And Philip Forsberg, he's got 3 points in 2 games. Ryan O'Reilly is a top line guy. He scored a power play goal. So some of the top liners for the Nashville Predators have been able to contribute. Again, there haven't been a lot of goals in this series, so nobody's absolutely lighting it up. But I do think now that we're 2 games into the series has shifted, for me, the storyline is, all right, enough of this from the Canucks top end guys. I'm looking for star power to rise to the top here. And it won't matter who's in goal, quite frankly. If they hold Nashville to 15 shots, I guess it was 16 with the empty netter, I want to believe that Casey DeSmith is going to be able to do his part, but ultimately it won't matter whether it's him or Shilovs. If they're not scoring and their top end guys aren't taking control of this hockey game. And that's where I go back to the shot attempts are great, but I don't think that we can come out of game 3 here talking about all the shot attempts the Canucks players had. Somebody has to cash in. There has to be a bottom line. So, I think Casey DeSmith can provide them enough goaltending to win this series, but they're not going to win this series if those best players that all had incredible seasons. I mean, 103 points for JT Miller. He's got an assist on an empty netter. That's his offensive contribution to this point in this series. So that's where I go back to. Certainly Miller and Hughes, they were remarkably consistent throughout the regular season. Petey has his issues, obviously, since the All-Star break. But Brock Besser, with his 40 goals, he scores in bunches. So the fact that he hasn't scored in 2, it wouldn't surprise me if he burst out and had a big night. But again, one thing to say it, it's time for those guys to get out there and actually make it happen.
1,000,000%. You can talk about chances in the regular season because you have bucket loads of games that are coming up and they're eventually going to go in. It is much more difficult to do that in a best-of-7 Stanley Cup playoff series, which of course is now a best-of-5 Stanley Cup playoff series. Jeff, you mentioned Artur Shilovs. How quick do you think the hook would be brought out if Casey DeSmith isn't going tonight?
I think he's got a little bit of leash here. Because if you turn to Shilovs this early, then, where do you go from here if it doesn't go well for him the rest of the night? So I'd be surprised if we saw him in game 3. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's impossible that we see him. But again, I think the Canucks can take the blueprint that they laid down the other night, control the puck, control the play, all those shots. You want to believe that they're going to be able to spend time in the offensive zone. I'm curious to see what kind of adjustments, what kind of matchup game we get from Andrew Brunette now that he's got last change here, because really we haven't seen that much of the matchup game through the first 2 games of this series, or at least as much as the chess match, I think, that we thought we'd see. But you asked about goaltending. I have to believe that this is Casey DeSmith's game, certainly. Like, I think he's got some leash, Matt. That said, you're right. Like, just like the players, the skaters, the Canucks can't afford to wait for guys to, find their game in this series. So if you're a Canucks fan, certainly you're hoping that Casey DeSmith holds up his end of the bargain and the night goes smoothly for him. If we see Artur Shilovs in this series, I mean, the fact that we're talking about going to a third stringer, obviously things haven't been going the way that the Vancouver Canucks wanted. So let's see how it goes for DeSmith. But Shilovs showed down the stretch that Tocchet has some trust in him. And maybe at some point in the series, we do see the Canucks go to their third string guy.
What did Tocchet say Friday morning with regards to Demko? He was asked another question, and what just clarified he's week to week.
Yeah, I'm not sure that he provided a ton of clarity, quite frankly. The question was, can you clear this up? Because there have been reports that he's done for the year. There have been reports that we could see him again at some point in this series. Tocchet just said he is week to week. And we know that the last time he was week to week was the March 9th injury against Winnipeg, and that turned out to be the better part of 6 weeks. So I'm certainly not expecting to see him in this round. I know that there are reports that this is fairly significant, and he probably won't play even if the Canucks advance. But if anybody thinks it's day-to-day, Tocchet at least put it out there again today that we're going week to week is the official word from the hockey club on Thatcher Demko.
Yeah. There was resounding support for the power play change we saw in this booth yesterday with Blake and I. I just think Lindholm's a better shooter, and I just think he's a better net front guy than Connor Garland. Do you anticipate that change will stick? And how do you think he may help this power play?
Yeah, and you look at the goal that he scored in Game 82 in Winnipeg was the deflection, the first game that he played for the Canucks, net front presence in Carolina. So, those are goals that, for the most part, Connor Garland hasn't scored in terms of the tips and the deflections. Garland's willing to get in with the, nose dirty, get to the blue paint, but Connor Garland is not a shooting threat. We see that, and so does the opponent. And it doesn't matter if it's Nashville, even down the stretch when Garland was the fifth member of that first unit power play, he would be out on his a right shot guy on the left flank, and teams would just let him float there and drift there because they knew that even if the puck went to him, he wasn't going to shoot it. And so really in some ways, it's almost like 4 scoring threats against 4 defenders with Connor Garland. So I like this. I think Lindholm is just a more dangerous player in a lot of ways. And what was there wasn't working for the Vancouver Canucks. So why stick with it? Again, I think you can't wait to make these kinds of changes. So, I applaud that one from Rick Tocchet. Whether it works, we'll find out. But they're 0 for 8 in this series now, or 0 for 6 in the series. That's not getting it done. So, this power play has to be a weapon. I think they recognize that. And we'll see just by throwing a different wrinkle of the Predators as well. Maybe you keep them on their toes when it comes to their penalty killing strategies.
How much is it also the fact that, look, you're giving up Garland's ability to create retrievals, which is something Tocchet's a fan of, but he also has the puck on his stick a lot, as opposed to just being a net front guy. And, maybe is there a thought that, look, we need the puck more in JT Miller's hands, in Quinn Hughes' hands, maybe at least Paterson's hands, as opposed to Garland, which just the puck gravitates to him when he's out there?
Yeah, and again, when it's on his stick, the entire building knows that it's not going to. He's never taking a slap shot. I don't know that I've ever seen Connor Garland take a slap shot, and yet he fakes it. The puck comes to him, and he always fakes the slapper. And again, these teams are so heavily scouted and so well prepared now that the Predators know that Connor Garland's not really a threat to shoot from the flank either. So, Lindholm's a bigger body, can get to the front of the net, maybe more of a handful for some of those defenders, engage them in front of the net, maybe push them out of the way a little bit to create some shooting lanes. Whatever the case, I just think that it's the right move at the right time. Doesn't guarantee success, and it's not a knock on Connor Garland and all the good things that he does for the Vancouver Canucks, but he seemed to be the guy that you would take off that power play grouping. And so Lindholm's next up, and let's see what he can do with the opportunity.
What are you thinking stylistically from Nashville different now that they're at home? Do you expect to see some matchups? Do you expect to see them try to open it up and get into their transition game? What do you see there?
Yeah, I expect to see them block a whole bunch more shots, whether they're at home or away. Doesn't matter. I mean, that's in their DNA now. But look, I think this team showed in the second half of the season that they are a dominant force when they get going, when they're able to play the way that they want to play. They haven't had the puck much. And so credit to the Vancouver Canucks. I'm curious to see, it's hard to call the other night a low event night when you have 84 shot attempts, but low shots on goal. I'm curious to see where the shot totals go in this hockey game. Obviously, the Canucks want to get it up higher and test UC Saros, but I do think that the Predators are going to want to skate and try and open things up here and take some chances. And so, Andrew Brunette's got last change. He's going to have that matchup capability now. And I am curious to see. I would think that JT Miller and his line would draw, whatever attention that the Predators want to throw at them in terms of setting the matchup. I almost feel like the Predators are going to dare Elias Pettersson to, announce his arrival in this series, if you will. That we just haven't seen anything from Petey yet, and it's almost like the Predators probably just want to let him lie there and keep doing his thing. And at some point maybe they have to pay attention to him, but he just hasn't been that player that we've all seen at spurts throughout this season and earlier in his career. So yeah, kind of curious to see what Andrew Rennett and his coaching staff do in the way of matchups. But as we saw on the road, like he set his lineup, he starts his fourth line, and the Canucks took JT Miller and put him up against Michael McCarron, and it kind of stayed that way through those first couple of games. Lindholm got a little bit of the O'Reilly matchup at times. So yeah, we'll see how things unfold here in Nashville, but the Canucks don't control the change. And how many times have we heard guys, Rick Tocchet, throughout this year talking about the importance of line changes? And if he's trying to get away from matchups, then, there is zero margin for error in slow changes, poor changes, too many guys on the ice. Sometimes when you're the road team and you're trying to work your way away from matchups, that's where you run into some trouble. So Canucks took a lot of too many men on the ice penalties throughout the regular season. They haven't yet here in this series, but just something to be mindful of as we work our way through game 3 here tonight.
Yeah, Preds were screaming for one the other night, actually, and took one themselves. Jeff, last question, big one. Can you stop by the discount souvenir shop for Tim McGraw and get Farhan's daughter a little pic?
She's already got a shirt from the concert here.
Oh, she doesn't need any more souvenirs?
No, she's Tim McGraw. She's filled to the brim.
All right. What you got planned for Rinkwide this weekend, Jeff? Let everybody know.
Yeah, well, we're here in Nashville, so we'll take in the games. Irf's going to hold down the fort back in studio right after the game, and then I'm going to go down to the locker rooms, get some reaction, and jump on as quickly as I can after the coaches' press conferences, and we'll break it all down as we always do, all of our usual features, and looking forward to it, and we'll see. It's game 3. This isn't absolute do or die, but Canucks can wrestle back home ice advantage and put themselves in the driver's seat. If the Preds find a way to back up their win the other night to take a 2-1 series lead, some real adversity for this Vancouver Canuck team, and the stakes will go up for game number 4. So we'll have a thorough breakdown, full analysis, all of the listener and viewer feedback as well, and all of our regular Rinkwide features. So looking forward to it. We'll start right after the buzzer. You're in good hands with Irfan Gaffar, and then I'll jump on as quickly as I can.
Yep, great job. Live, of course, YouTube, many social media platforms. Awesome to have you back on the road covering the team, Jeff. Thanks for this, and we'll catch up on Sekeres Price next week.
All right, guys, enjoy the game.
Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.